All right. So thank you very much, Angelina and Apurv. Um, I think you guys have joined most of the classes, many, like more than 50-60%, I assume. Angelina, especially, you have been very regular, as far as I know. Maybe you missed one or so or two. Um, so, as you've seen, right, we started our journey inquiring the question, right? What is the pursuit of happiness? Of course, the first session was harmonizing body, mind, and our soul, right? But then the inquiry started. What, why we are looking for the pursuit of happiness? And then we went to the topic 3, identifying that okay, we have consciousness, where the consciousness is coming from. We identified soul. We went into the different proof of that, right? Then we went to the next topic, the mind. We analyzed that how mind is so important for our spiritual growth, or even any kind of growth. Even if one wants to grow in the material world, they need to control their mind, right? But especially spirituality, without controlling the mind, one cannot progress, right? And then moods and modes. We learned that there are 3 modes of nature: goodness, ignorance, and passion, right? And then we also learn that how these modes impact us, and the kind of work what we do, it also gets impacted. So the modes impact us humans and our context both. Then we learned about the law of karma. There's a whatever we do, there's always a reaction, just like in Newton's law. We learned that there are 3 different kind of a karma: good karma, bad karma, and akarma. Akarma, when nobody gets any good reaction or the bad reaction. And we also learn that whether we do good, then we have to enjoy the good. When we do bad, then we have to suffer the bad, right? And as long we have the good and the bad, the life will continue. The life will continue, the birth cycle of birth and death. So the only way to come out of it is to learn how to do the akarma. And then we talked about this last topic, which was karma, free will, and destiny. We talked about how, okay, there is a karma, but there is a free will also. We have the choice, right? So there are limited choices, but we always have the choice, right? And that's what determine the choices which we are making is determining our destiny, the next, right? So we are in our current house, which is our body, right? And as we are living our life, we are forming our next body, right? So it can be a material body, which will be most of us, or for the practitioners who are practicing bhakti yoga. They might be building their spiritual body. They are ready to getting into the spiritual body. So today we'll be talking about the spiritual evolution. We must have learned the cycle of evolution, the scientific circle, Darwin's theory of evolution. You are going to today learn about the uh, evolution, the way the Vedic text talks about. What is evolution, right? It is the evolution of the body, or it is something else. So that's the topic we'll be touching today. Any question before we move and do this video for today? If not, let's do it.
Spiritual evolution. The foundation of all spiritual knowledge is the understanding that we're not this body, but the eternal spiritual consciousness. Consciousness is the life force that activates the body. The Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 13, explains, quote, "As the embodied soul continually passes in this body, from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. How does the spirit pass into another body? What type of body does the spirit pass into? How is the next bodily form decided?" The Padma Purana, an ancient Vedic bhakti text, describes, "These are the 900,000 species of aquatic life, 2 million species of plants and trees, 1.1 million species of insects, 1 million species of bird life, 3 million species of beasts, and 400,000 species of human life. Hence, there are 8.4 million species of life forms throughout the creation. The meaning of species understood by biologists is different from the meaning implied here. The meaning used by biologists applies to the gross physical appearance or the gross morphological feature of the living material bodies. The Vedic meaning, however, which is derived after thorough and careful analysis, is based on the level of consciousness of the living being. For example, biologists say that all human beings belong to one species, whereas the Vedic literatures list 400,000 species of human beings. In other words, there are 400,000 grades of human beings on different levels of consciousness, from most degraded human beings to highly evolved pure spiritualists. The varieties of life forms are products of the combinations and permutations of the three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. The life forms are just like temporary houses or apartments of various sizes, shapes, and colors, in which the eternal self or living being temporarily resides. One may occupy one of these apartments according to one's ability to pay the rent, but all types of apartments nevertheless exist simultaneously. Similarly, the spirit, according to his karma, is given to the facility to occupy one of these bodily forms, but all the forms exist simultaneously. Therefore, the body does not evolve. The spirit evolves by paying the price of karma. Transmigration. In the material world, the consciousness has two kinds of coverings: the subtle body and the gross body. Actually, consciousness enjoys through the subtle body, which is composed of mind, intelligence, and false ego. The gross body is the instrumental outer covering. When the gross body is lost, or when it dies, the root of the gross body, the mind, intelligence, and false ego, continues and brings about another gross body. Although the gross bodies change, the real root of the gross body, the subtle body, is always there. The subtle body's activities, be they pious or impious, create another situation for the consciousness to enjoy or suffer in the next gross body. Thus, the subtle body continues, whereas the gross bodies change one after another. The process of transmigration of the consciousness is very subtle. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state will attain without a fail. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, text 6. According to the condition of the mind at the time of death, the minute consciousness enters into the womb of a particular mother and then the consciousness develops a particular type. Get the body of a human being, a cat, a dog, or any other species, depending on all these factors. After death, the living being gets another body according to his desires, total impression on the mind, and one's karmic reactions. So at the time of death, the living entity, under supervision of higher authorities, is taken to another gross body. The process is just like air carrying fragrance. Bhagavad Gita 15:8. This is basically the mechanism of reincarnation. There are 8.4 million species for the consciousness to choose from. Think of any desire. If someone likes to sleep a lot, the material nature will give him a polar bear's body so that he can sleep for 6 months in a year without being ridiculed. If someone delights in eating flesh, nature may award him the body of a tiger. Lower forms of life, such as plants, animals, or birds, do not suffer from sinful activities because they never violate the laws of nature. A tiger, for instance, does not commit sinful activity by killing its prey because his body is meant to act in that way. It is properly equipped for that purpose. Karma, which determines the path one takes through various species or to other human bodies, is accrued only in the human form of life. The consciousness uses up its accumulated karma as he passes through the non-human species. Thus, we can understand how the human form of life is like a crossroad where one has to clearly decide which road to take: the path to heaven, the path to hell, or the path to God. Originally, the consciousness is fully conscious of its spiritual identity, But when the consciousness desires to enjoy this material world, it falls down from the spiritual platform. First, the consciousness accepts a body that is human in form, but gradually, due to his degraded activities, he transmigrates into lower forms of life, into the animal, plant, and aquatic forms. By the gradual process of spiritual evolution, the living entity again attains the body of a human being and is given another chance to get out of the process of transmigration. If he again misses his chance in the human form to understand his position, he is again placed in the repeated cycle of birth and death in various types of bodies. The living entity falls from the human body to the animal kingdom, owing to the bad karma and animalistic propensities. After he has worked off his karma in the non-human species, eventually he returns to the human platform, where he gets a new opportunity to carve out a new destiny. While the living entity is in the animal body, he loses the opportunity to make spiritual progress. Only in the human form of life can one choose to perform spiritual activities like chant the Hare Krishna mantra and make tangible spiritual advancement on the progressive march back to the spiritual world. On the other hand, living entities in non-human bodies are forced to act only by instinct till they get a human body. The human form of life is especially meant to facilitate the liberation of the conditioned consciousness. Therefore, one who abuses human life by engaging in sense gratification loses this opportunity to get out of this samsara, the cycle of birth and death. The living beings are suffering due to our forgetfulness of Supreme or Krishna and the blissful situation of his abode. If we take shelter of Krishna as the protector and take advantage of his instructions, we can easily revive our eternal, blissful nature as parts and parcels of the Supreme. It is for this purpose that Krishna has created human life. We can escape the cycle of repeated birth and death by reviving our eternal love relationship with Supreme or Krishna and return back to our original constitutional position. This can be easily achieved by regularly chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in the association of like-minded spiritualists. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
All right. Oh, Angelina, you reached your home? Wow. So you missed some part of it, some part of it. We will cover that. So it was, I suppose the part you missed was talking about the references from the Bhagavad Gita, that how one gets the different kind of a body, and it was talking about whatever we remember at the time of death, right? That's what we get, right? So if I'm too tied up uh, with the with my relationship, let's say my wife, right, or my dog or my kid, and that's what I remember based on my desire. So three factors I talked about. Based on my desire, what are the different impression over my mind throughout my multiple lives I have lived? So there's always impression in our mind, right? So desire, my impression of the mind, and the karmic balance what we have. So desire dictate, right? So desire dictate that I want to enjoy, I want to do this, I want to do that. I have so many desires, right? So that dictates. So and then it looks then it looks what are the impression, and then whether I have the karmic balance. And based on that, let's say if I was thinking about my wife at the time of death, very likely I may get a female body, right? So those are, and that it was citing the text from the Bhagavad Gita on that. So there was few citation on the Bhagavad Gita text, and it also talked about how there are 8.4 million life form, and then the 400,000 different types of human species. So those are things. I don't know what else you missed, uh, but as we are going along, I think we can talk.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, I tried to switch over from my phone to my computer, and it took a very long time to load everything in WhatsApp. I went to a Zoom the meeting where no one was. So thank you for that. I missed the last like 5 minutes, really.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. We'll cover during the discussion. Okay. So here's our icebreaker question for today. Tell us about a time when you felt blessed.
I can go. It was actually on my trip this past weekend. I went to Katmai National Park, which again I think is one of the least visited national parks in the U.S. And I got to like see so much wildlife, something that I'm really passionate about and hold close to my heart. So I felt like really grateful that I was able to experience this that not a lot of people get to experience in their lifetime, and just kind of think about how fortunate I am to be able to do this.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what makes the connection with the wildlife? What kind of feeling you have when you see the wildlife? Like you feel really connected, right?
Yeah, it's just like bears. I got to see a lot of bears. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like one of my favorite animals. But yeah, just kind of seeing them go about their daily lives and fishing and things like that.
Thank you, Apurv.
I'll go. Usually when I think about it, even if I'm having a bad day, um, and so I'm a veteran, so I have a lot of friends who are here and not here. But and so even if I'm having a bad day, I also understand and realize that, some people would just like do anything for having a bad day to be able to have it. And so I tend to think that way.
That's beautiful. And I appreciate the talk about bears. They're so powerful, right? It's impressive. They're powerful, but they're also slow, and they work by slow progress to sort of fatten up for the long slumber, and then they come out of that. It's a really interesting species, so I love that. Um, well, so I can't remember which day it was, but earlier this week I had intended to like pack and organize and do all these things. And I was reminded by a couple of friends from church that we had talked about going kayaking or paddling. So this is where I spent my evening watching the sun set from Lake Wilderness Park. And you can tell we're just really, really stinking happy. Water there's a couple of things in this world that make me really, really happy, and where I find joy, and that's on, in, or near the water, and through music and family and good connection. So that was just a wonderful moment with really great people, good conversation, and I was touching in the water
Were
the whole
you
time.
you were in Maple Valley? Because Lake Wilderness is down the street from me.
Oh, is it? Yeah, yeah.
You said
Okay,
Lake
I came to
Wilderness
your
Park. I'm like,
neighborhood.
wait a minute.
Yep, I'm just in Kent, so it's not far.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like across the way from Lake Wilderness Park. We're really
Awesome.
close. That's good. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you for sharing. See, for me, I means not really philosophically. I really feel that every day I can see how blessed I am. Based on that, I feel the joy inside my heart, right? Even like whenever I'm talking to you, even though my connection with Apurva Angelina has been pretty limited, it just the joy of seeing people and seeing that how we are related to each other, right? And there's an inner connection between us, just gives me a joy, right? So I'm really means thank you for sharing and thank you for being here, joining, talking with. It gives me joy. Thank you. All right, Bree, would you like to take us with the questions? discussions?
Of course. All right. So let me get to the question. Right. As usual, you know how interactive I am, so please let's have a discussion. What are the various species of life that are described, and what is the basis of their classification? And so, as Deepak had very nicely explained, there was a section in this where they said that there was 8,400,000 species of life. And then out of all of those species of life, 400,000 of them are human species of life. And so, was there anything that resonated with how species of life were described in this that are different from how you would have seen it prior to that video?
I thought it was pretty interesting that the Vedic scriptures describe or determine the number of species by level of consciousness as compared to what I've been taught up with from a science perspective, where it's how species like looks or behaves, I guess, the biological definition. So I thought it was pretty interesting. I don't know how I feel about that yet, but it's interesting.
It is, right? I've never heard of it before either. Before reading the Shastras. It was very shocking. What about you, Jolene?
So I missed I missed that part of it, but I did catch a statement about what form you might take in another life, depending on sort of what actions you've taken, your sort of karmic bank, and the difference between becoming something like an animal and the ability of humans to make sort of conscious decisions. And that was the only thing that I caught that is related to this question, I think.
No, I mean that's perfect because that's really how the species of life are classified. You know, it's from the video, it said that the human species of life were the ones that were given the gift or the ability to make conscious decisions, which could determine the rest of their fate, right? And so you could make a decision to be elevating yourself to a more conscious being, or you could be making a decision, knowingly or unknowingly, that could keep you trapped in more unconscious beings. And so I know when I first started Bhakti, I thought everything had just a basic consciousness. I knew that human beings they were smarter in a way that they could make decisions. And I knew that there was nature when it came to animals, but I didn't realize that the consciousness of an animal and a plant or something that's not a human being um, had been given that body due to a desire or due to their karmic reaction or um and then not incurring like I had no idea about any of that formula to it, which is very interesting when you classify something like that, right? And so let me see really quick. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, so I'll just post this. So this is, so see, I pasted in the chat. This is the verse which Padma Purana was talking about. And if you know maybe Apurv, you may can understand the word Jalaja, right? Jalaja means water, right? Nava, Lakshani, means that is 9 lakhs. 9 lakh is 900,000. So you can see so this is the verse which was cited there, and you'll see the translation with the number of species in that category, and that leads to the 8.4 million. And it talks about this is the level of consciousness. So I'll give you some background, right? As I was learning this subject, right, and I was trying to make sense out of it and try to make the logical connection for me. Coming from the science background, this has always been right. I like to make the logical connection, how it makes sense or not. So I looked into the scientific field. Um, okay, so Apurvi, we are asking the order here are those increasing order of consciousness. Yes, that's true. It is increasing order of consciousness. Exactly. So, so if you look into this current science, right, we have identified around 1.5 million to 1.7 million. They estimate that we can have like the estimation, right, that we haven't identified, the scientific community haven't identified, is around, they estimate that it could be 10 to 11 million species could be there, right? So in the ballpark, but obviously our books are so like as if somebody, the person who can say exactly how many species would there be, right? The person who has designed the system. So there's exactly 8.4 million, and this is not just our Mother Earth, right? Not our planet, but the whole planetary system is talking about. So we talked about the extraterrestrial. So the our Vedic text says that there are multiple planets, in fact 14 exact 14 different planets where living entity humans like lives. They have the different name, they have the different capabilities, they are much advanced in the from the our we human, right? They are also categorized in the living entity, but they have a lot of power. They can float, they can go from one realm to the other realm. So they have, so there are different category of and those are also counted in this, right? Those are also counted in this. So that's the 8.4 million, right? So that's again, if you are chewing it, right, it requires some chewing, because if we haven't heard it, we say, wow, okay, Apurv, yes, go ahead. Sorry, I'll keep quiet and let Bree drive the discussion.
No, that was good. I mean, it's true. What did you have any questions, Approve?
I have two questions.
Yeah.
Trying to decide which one to ask first. I guess the first one. No, I'm gonna go with the second one first, the more related.
Of course.
As a clarification, I think the video mentioned, and I might be misunderstanding this, but the video mentioned that we start off as human beings, and then the human life is a crossroad that would determine karma, essentially, that would determine then which, in this case, which category of species we then move to, right? Is that correct?
So, from my understanding of the video, it started off as a human being, in the example, because the human being, is the only living entity that can make a decision, based, a decision on the activities that they have in their lives that will either elevate them to a higher planetary system or even transcendental life, or it'll degrade them. And so I think it just started off that way, saying that there's an evolutionary system, and what we are, who we constitutionally are souls, and we go from body to body, and that's evolution. So, science will say evolution is the development of the material body, but evolution for us is actually transmigration from soul to soul. I mean, not soul to soul, soul, body to body. So us, the soul, transmigrates from body to body, until we reach the human platform of life. And that's when you, in your activities, and whatever your activities cause karmically, will determine on if you either elevate or you degrade yourself. Now, what it didn't really go into is that, we as souls in the material world, because Earth is not the only, like, if you were to leave the body, if I were to leave the body, and I were to receive another material body, does not mean that I would transmigrate to another material body necessarily on this earth. I might transmigrate to another material body somewhere else in the material world. And so, as souls who have many, 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 many desires and do many, 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 many activities in many types of forms of life, have been trapped in higher elevated material platforms and degraded low material platforms. And we're just stuck in it. That's why they say that there's the cycle of birth and death, because we're continuously being born in new bodies and dying or leaving those bodies to be born again into another body. And and so it's an evolutionary cycle. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. Because my interpretation of that was like, my interpretation was that the scriptures are claiming that humans came first and then evolved, which goes against like what science says. Like we evolved from single cell organism to what we are today. But I guess that's also a difference in the definition of evolution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot, to be honest, because a lot of what scientists are really good at, because we don't want to discredit scientists, but the scientists are only able to do research and experiments and understand material things. And so, because we are not material beings truly, it's really hard to understand what we are. But it's very interesting too, because we know what we are. Have you guys ever heard of what's that song, Dust in the Wind? Like, all we are dust in the wind. How would we know that? Was that person a scientist? But that's more the truth than what a scientist would talk about with material evolution. Because so we know who we are, but unconsciously, And so it's a lot to chew. Um, but I wouldn't, when we talk about science and the transcendental nature of who we are, I wouldn't discredit material science, because it's for the material world. So it works for this world. It just doesn't work for describing the transcendental nature of who we really are and how we go from here to there. Same thing with like other life in a different planet, right? How can we know what types of life are on different planets with material science? We don't really have the capability. We have as much as we have, but we don't really have a capability. But if you have some knowledge of the soul and understand that with life comes life, then you would understand that there will be living entities in any form that has life on it in some way, shape, or form. And so a lot of, study and talking to, asking questions like this, talking to devotees and stuff, you'll come to understand a lot more about what evolution means, because it's far greater than just something that's on Earth. Yeah, you're going always, my situation going up and down, just cycling till one day I learn my lesson. And so, any
And if you
other?
can, yeah, if you
Yeah.
can add Siti from the video, it also gives the analogy of the home, right? That if you're living in an apartment and you've never gone out of the apartment, but there are other apartments that exist. So if I'm not gone out of my apartment to know that they're apartment, that doesn't mean the apartment doesn't exist, right? So and so this is logically, right? So see, I have read as a part of my study, I read about Darwin quite a bit, and that Darwin used to be a theistic person, right? And then his son died. And then he said that, oh, if there was a God, the God must be a very cruel person, right? So he started arguing in his mind. And then that, oh, no, no, why he would take away my son? And then he said that, okay, then there must not be any God, right? So, and then from there, he wrote his book, The Theory of Evolution. And if you go and read that book, I have I wanted to read the whole book. I have but read only some scripts of that book. It says that how the giraffe evolved, right? So he says that the food, like they were eating, they were like cow or different deer, they were deer, right? And they were eating, and then the food was not there, and the only food was in the tree, so they started, is that how they evolved, and the leg becomes, so it's pretty, if you read that, it's pretty weird, it doesn't make logical sense, but that's how we are basing on that. And if you look into um uh, the some of the arguments which I during my learning I heard, which was that if we were really evolved from apes, then we must be seeing the apes which who are still evolving from apes to human. Why don't we see those, right? And I, of course, I didn't have the answer, right? So so logically I could understand that science definitely got this not really correct, that, and there was the other thing which somebody told me, that most of these philosophers in the beginning, they have access to the Vedas. Some of them, they read about it, and they picked the theory of evolution, but they twisted the theory of evolution to suit their purpose, right? So so we call in the scientific communities, we evolve, right? But it is the consciousness which is evolving, not the body which is evolving, right? So just I wanted to add some of these things, which has been through my own learning, as I have dealt with this subject growing up in my spiritual journey.
Mhm. Absolutely. What was the
So
second question? Oh, yeah.
yeah, I
Sorry.
was going to hop in here, just that, science is ever evolving too, isn't it? And as imperfect beings, we are only limited by what we know. And sometimes we don't know what we don't know, what we don't know about what we know.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I think for me, trying to think about something in a wholly scientific way limits my ability to believe in the things that are not yet understood. And I think so. What I try to do is keep perspective about the possibility of these things, whether I agree with it and can, wrap my head around it from a rational perspective or not.
Mm-hmm.
Some things you just know as truth because it burns in your heart. So yeah, I find this all really interesting because there's a lot in there that I'm like, I don't know about that, but I'm okay
Mm-hmm.
with that because I'm open. I'm open to learning and to growing there. So just some perspective.
It's a good perspective, to be inquisitive and to ask questions shows that there's a desire to learn because exactly as you said, as a human being, we're not perfect beings. And so um, we have to inquire. And, based on our good fortune, we end up finding the answers to these inquiries. So it's a good attitude to have. Um, what was your second question, Approve?
Second question was, it seems like according to the chat, aquatic life is less lower on a lower scale compared to plants and trees, right? So in my mind, I'm like, okay, but then we should be eating aquatic life and not plants and trees. So why do we choose to? Why is vegetarian promoted?
It's a good question. And so, um, when I think what people, so let's think about it in the material sense, right? When you have people who are like vegans versus people who eat meat, right? We'll just use that example. A lot of the reason that vegans get bashed by meat eaters are because vegans are like, oh, you're killing, a living entity and they have feelings and all these things. And then the meat eaters are just like, well, you're killing, trees. And so we're all killing, right? And so there's for them, they're trying to make sense as to why it's wrong to do one thing over another. For my specific practice in bhakti, we only take foods that are authorized by the shastras. and able to be offered to Krishna. And so it could, if Krishna said that he wants to eat meat and we can offer meat, then that's something that we would do. If Krishna says that he wants to eat plants and grains and beans, then that's what we do. If Krishna says that he wants to eat seafood, then that's what we do. We only participates in taking prasadam or foodstuffs that are authorized by the Shastras and able to offer to him, because it's ultimately we're feeding him, and then taking the remnants of that. So that's the reasonings as to our diets. It's not more so who is more elevated than another in the species. We're only following what we're allowed to do. And so Prabhupada, one of the acharyas, leading acharya for Western bhakti, would say, we're not vegetarians, we're prasadians. And so we don't base our determinations on what we're killing um, outside for anything outside of the pleasure of the Lord. So whatever we're taking and offering is for his pleasure, and that's authorized, and everything else we do not take. Did that answer your question, or did I miss anything?
I think so. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. It says there's a biblical scripture that says, worlds without number have I created. And I thought that this was one interesting area of alignment with what the video on Deepak mentioned. Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you one day, if you keep your inquisitive nature and you dive into the Shastras, you would be blown away. You would be blown away. What I will say in a very general state is that we are in a material world right now where that is only 1/4 of the whole creation. And there are infinite material worlds. You cannot conceive how many material worlds there are. And that's only 1/4 of the whole creation. So we're just dust in the wind. That's the truth. But I like that. Thank you for the scripture. You know, it's interesting too, coming from a Christian background, I've had some people who also mention like, oh, you know, these scriptures also say we can eat meat, but you know, if we go back to Exodus, where we were originally supposed to be in the garden and we were led by the will of the Lord before we actually took on the decision to have our own independence from Him, we only were allowed to eat the authorized foods in that garden, except for that one tree, right? And in that garden were what? Fruits, grains, beans, vegetables. There were no animals that they were telling you that it was okay to eat. We took our own independence, and then we had to leave the garden where all those authorized foods that were given to us by the will of the Lord was in. And we decided, because of our own will and intelligence, that we can eat other things. And so I tend to go to that as well. You know, we only, with the will of the Lord, offer foods that are for his pleasure. But then when we take our own intelligence and free will and do what we want, then we go out and kind of do what we want to do. We don't remember what we're supposed to be doing. So we tend to just think that it's okay to do some of these things. Right. I'm going to put the second question up. So, what criteria decide the next life form of the living entity? Explain by example. You all remember? What creates the next life form? I know one thing is desire, right? what you're desiring, what you're thinking of at the time of death, your consciousness. So in the video, it stated that they gave some examples like, oh, if you want to eat so much meat, you desire to eat that, then you might acquire a body of a tiger in order to freely and by nature eat meat, right? Is that something that you all had any conception of prior to listening to that? What kind of ideas did you all think? Did you think that there was any criteria of the next life form that we had to do?
I mean, I'm sure that there is, but I wasn't aware of it from this perspective. I have sort of a different take, and so that this was all new to me.
If you are open to sharing, what do you think? I was
Yeah.
confused when I learned this.
Well, this comes from my spiritual background. So I have been raised as a Latter-day Saint. I am not a sort of traditional Mormon in the purest sense. Clearly, I take classes like this. And I practice sort of what I feel and know in my heart is right. Through a lot of study and prayer and meditation to kind of figure out what is right for me. And I don't know, I teach Sunday school, so it's an interesting dichotomy here. There's literally the scriptures last week were talking about different degrees of heaven and also what type of foods we should or could eat. And so, yeah, it's all sort of rolling around in my mind right now. I don't know if I have an exact thought.
That's fair.
But
No, that's
yeah.
100%. That's 100% fair. I grew up in strict Baptist Christian background. And I remember when my husband got into that car accident and I came to the realization like, oh, I could really die any day. I started really thinking like, okay, well, if I did, would I go to heaven? And that felt real weird because I'm like, that sounds entitled for me to say
Mm.
that I deserve to go to heaven. I haven't done anything substantial in my life to think that I deserve to go to heaven. And so then I'm like, oh, oh. But then I'm like, well, I haven't done anything so terrible either to think that I would go to hell. And so I got confused. I got real confused. And I was just like, okay, well, I don't think that I'm like the worst person to do something like that. So I don't think I would go to either one. And so then I got like, well, where would I go then? And then after that, I got even more confused because then I was just like, okay, well, I heard that if you go to heaven, you don't come back. So where did I come from? And so then I got confused. I really did. I did not understand at all, you know, what I was doing here and where I was going and how I could get to a better situation. Like I always consider somebody who would go to heaven as like the saints, like people who are just like doing things for people all the time. And yes, I try my hardest to do things like that. I was following strictly my religious background, but I mean, like, I don't think that I was doing anything. And so I'm like, where am I going and where did I come from and who am I? I was so confused.
Yeah, I tend to believe that we have been spiritual beings for however long, forever, that we live on in eternity outside of this mortal existence. I believe that we existed in heaven, which I don't believe is removed from us because God is within us, and that we chose this path and that we accepted it as a challenge, as a journey to get back to Him. So that's my belief system. I do believe that we live on for eternity. And I do believe that we can ascend to live with Him again. And at some point, we will be resurrected into a perfected body. Um, Again, that's not to say that I don't think it's possible that that could take very many different forms between now and then. And so that's the kind of thing that I'm wrestling with. But that's always been sort of my, I mean, not always, but maybe from the time I was a young girl or maybe like high school age, that's always been sort of my truth, my understanding with the learning that I've done thus far in life.
I don't think you're wrong. We are spiritual, eternal beings. We are. We've been here from the beginning. So that piece I know for sure is correct. I also know that you cannot separate heaven from yourself because God is with you. So that is also correct. Um, and then the grappling of like, okay, what do you have to do in between that though, right? So you understand we're eternal living beings. There's something that we're doing in the middle, and then the goal is to be a perfect spiritual being and reunited with the Lord. These are not wrong. These are all correct. And then, but in the middle, right, is that criteria of, how do you get to that next living form? That's the middle piece that was missing for me. That was the middle piece because I also believed that as well. And I was taught that as well. But the missing piece was like, how do you do it? Like, really, how do you do it? And so, and what attracted me to bhakti mostly was because you get you get the choices that you make and the things that you do will help you create a body or situation that will get you to and closer to God. And I really found that attractive. I didn't have to have somebody else do it for me. I could do it myself. What do you think, Approve?
I've kind of been thinking about like the criteria that the video mentioned is like your karma plus your, what you think about at the time of death, right? Which with like medical advancements where we can now keep the gross body alive for longer, I wonder like what happens in that case where I don't know, maybe you're subtle, but like your soul has departed, but your gross body's like I don't know, like something along those
I see
lines,
what you're
right?
saying. Yeah,
Um,
I know what you're
yeah.
saying. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are attached to their material bodies because, and a lot of people aren't so inclined to understand who they really are. So that makes them even more attached. They don't want to die, which is why these scientific developments are trying to preserve that. Um, but what I can say is that material science can't defeat the spiritual nature of who we are. You're not going to be able to live in a material body forever. Nothing materially lasts forever. Nothing. That's just the law of this world. It's all temporary. And so, have you ever heard of that? What is it? You agreed to be born, so you agreed to die. That's the law of this world. But it's interesting because oh gosh, I lost it. Oh, yes. I want to tell you all the reason so the period of time, right? And the choices that we make. I'll tell you a very short story about how we're trapped in the material world. This is how. So God was he was with one of his greater sages, Narad Muni, and so they were associating together in person. And Narad Muni is like down in this material world, it's covered and controlled by Maya, the nature that controls our activities. So those modes of nature. So he's like, I am curious about what this Maya is. It's so powerful. What is it? And so then God, Krishna, said, okay, well, could you turn over there and give me some water? And so Narad Muni turns around to fetch water. And on the way, there was this beautiful woman that came and took him away. He was in love with her and completely built a life, had kids, was very happy for many, 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 many years. And one day, progeny, that woman that he was in love with and completely dedicated his life died. She died, left the body. All of the things that he had acquired in this time, many years, like 60 some years, many years, just doing everything. He was working, he was supporting and, taking care of everything because of his love for this woman. She died, and all the things that he had accumulated was not able to be sustained or helped. So he was crying bitterly, miserable, just so sad. And then Krishna, God, taps him on the shoulder and he's just like, you forgot to give me my water. That is the situation in that which we are in the material world. And so there are so many things that distract us from the real mission that we're supposed to have. And that is what keeps us in these material forms and birth and death. And so that's one small thing, but that's the explanation. So there are ways, obviously, this video says if you practice your meditation, you become a little bit more stable in understanding what you're doing and how that is going to better your spiritual life. That small practice alone is, substantially more than 99.9% of the material world. And that's the 1/4 of creation. So, you know, you're really desiring to, be with God, then I think you'll come to grips with understanding, you know, looking inwards instead of doing things on an outward level would be more of a benefit. It's hard though. So I mean, don't think it's not a thing. But and so it's excuse me, you all, my computer is like dying. So the living entity falls from the human body to the animal kingdom. And then basically that's because of their own bad karma and animalistic propensities. So if you act like cats and dogs, then you will be cats and dogs. After he's worked off his karma in the non-human species, eventually he'll return into the human platform. Karma determines the path one takes through various species or to other human bodies. It's accrued only in the human form of life, though. So the soul uses it as uses their accumulated karma and it passes through non-human species, and that's how we come to understand that human life is like a crossroads. So that's the opportunity in which you get to decide um, where do I want to go? So that's the only type of form that we get to decide where you want to go. No animal gets to decide that or plant. And so they call human form of life a matchless gift because a lot of times a lot of people don't even realize that they have that opportunity. And so that is the special boon of the human form of life. And it's not to be discouraged either, because we've been here for time immemorial, so we've evolved many, 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 many times. And as the video says, you will, if depending on your actions, you'll go wherever you go, and you'll end up getting another chance as a human. You pass or fail, you'll go where you go, you get another chance of being a human. Things like so. it's a cycle, a very big, vicious cycle. Right. What is the special privilege of the human form of life? What changes can we make in our lifestyles to make the best use of this human form of life?
We can lift each other up spiritually, right? In a way that other forms cannot. Animals play and they care, right? I mean, if you've ever had a dog wiggle themselves to death when you walk through the door, you know that they experience feelings of some kind, some sort, and they grieve, and you can see that. They're very attuned, but we have this special capacity to help each other in a way that is like morally appropriate, which I don't think that, animals are doing it based out of survival instinct, in the way that I see it. It's truly just to survive. We do this because we want to, because we know it's right, because it elevates our vibration or our consciousness, or yeah, I just think we just have that propensity to sort of lift each other up in a way that other species don't.
Absolutely. That's 100% true. In the video, it says that um, outside of a human form of life, every other form of life is controlled by nature. So they don't have the special propensity to making decisions that get them to a situation of higher or, like how we do. Our direct actions will determine where we go, whereas an animal's actions will not determine, they don't receive karma for their actions. An animal can kill, and that is legal for an animal to do so based off of it being controlled by nature. But a human being, if a human being kills, it is not legal on a spiritual platform or on a material platform. It is just straight illegal. But we still have independence enough to do it. So you make a very good point.
How is it that an animal form without that legality issue um, becomes the higher form of human life if they're not judged by karma? How
Yeah,
how is that
that's a good
possible?
question. Yeah. So they're controlled completely by nature. The reason why there is an animal form of life is because there was some soul who had abused their free will, and by that abuse they received that body in order to fulfill their desires. And so because they received that body, um, they are fulfilling whatever desires that they have for that span of time, but it's completely controlled by nature. So really an animal, in the great sense of things, they're all suffering. They're not, they don't have the same sense of happiness as we do. We, as a human being, could love an animal, and we could destroy or really hurt an animal, and they don't have any power to do anything about it. So they're really incurring all the karma of their past life on whatever is happening to them. They're suffering that karma and not able to make a decision on how to change their situation. They have to wait that span of time and live that body. But in a human, we do have that power to learn, oh, maybe I'm not doing the right thing. Maybe if I do this, I will be in a better situation. And not only in a material sense, but in a spiritual sense, we'll be able to elevate ourselves or degrade ourselves based off of those decisions.
So that's my curiosity, is how if you can be degraded back to that form of nature,
Mhm.
how do you re-elevate?
It's the cycle, it's evolution. You'll end up receiving another body
Mm.
based off of the time. So there's a time where you will get a human body or whatever body you get, and you have to live out that timeline of life in that form until
Okay.
you receive another human body.
Okay.
Yeah. And it goes for any body, really. So, like,
Mhm.
even if you're in a higher elevation, you would have to live out that form. And, you know, it's a good question. Do you have any thoughts, Approve?
Um,
I think, yeah.
no, I think we covered it all.
Are you sure?
Mine's off topic, but if we have another question, let's go with that
Okay,
first.
fair enough. So a human form of life is, again, you, in a material sense, even, you can make decisions or perform activities in which you desire to do that will determine, your fate in a material and a spiritual sense. That's the only type of form that can do that. So a squirrel can't say that they want to be a banker or have a stable 5-story home with, you know, baby gerbils and stuff like that. So like only a human can do that. And furthermore, outside of the material sense, a human can figure out or make inquiry about who am I? As an animal cannot make that inquiry, as in, who am I? A human form of life can say, who am I? Is there somebody greater than me? Where am I going to go after life or death? We can make all these inquiries. It's a very, very special privilege to be able to make an inquiry such as this. And when we have these inquiries and we begin whatever path we're beginning, those actions will be a distinct reason as to our elevation, which does happen. So outside of like an earthly type of platform, there's a heavenly platform, which is also material. But a lot of people, they want to be in heaven, and so they do pious things. And so because they're doing pious things, and they're gonna end up elevating into a heavenly situation. But heaven, in the sense of some um, scripture, is also material. And there are levels of that. There are levels of heaven, just like there are levels of hell. And so, and then there's the earthly plane where your field of activities will determine where you go. So a human being has the power to learn, who am I? Where did I come from? What can I do in order to escape birth, death, old age, disease? How can I be happy? How do I make my situation better? What can I do to make my material situation better, or even understand material versus spiritual natures of things? We're the only species that are able to do so. And that is my understanding of the special privilege of that form. So once we have that understanding, then we can make better choices. Um, Even small choices that you can make put you in a better situation. Um, and so that's what I got on that. Let's see. I think that was all of the questions. Did you want to ask your question, Approve?
My question was kind of the second part. Is this question like what changes can we make?
Mhm.
And you were talking about like doing more pious activities or like how killing is against be against in the spiritual world. But what about like a police officer or someone that's in the military, like fighting in one of the wars, and they're ordered to kill the soldier?
Mhm. Yep. Yeah. And they are. And it's also, if you disobey that, then you're doing the wrong thing, right? So if I'm like, I'm not doing that, then I'd be doing the wrong thing. It's a good question. And so how do you make changes in your lifestyle that is better for your situation? Remember the example I gave you all about um, how we offer food for the pleasure of the Lord. And so if you understand who you are, which is a small, small, small soul, which is a part of the bigger soul, which is God. So we're small parts and parcels of God, his children, right? And we are his servants. And so whatever we're doing in our lives should be for the pleasure of the Lord. And so, as the Bhagavad Gita's story describes, Arjun, so this is a good example, is a warrior who was told that he needs to fight. And when he was fighting against all of his mentors, his friends, his family. It's a big drama about that whole situation, but he was fighting all of them. And he was asked to do that by the Lord. And so, because Arjun was surrendered to the Lord and understood that that was what the Lord wanted, he obeyed and did that, which is correct in comparison to not doing that and being like, oh, for religiosity and morality, I'd rather be a sage and go into the forest and not do any of these things. And so it's a really important thing to know who you are, what your relationship to the Supreme, the Lord is, how do you serve? And based off of these things, the best thing to do is to chant. But based off of that, the pleasure of the Lord and what you're doing, your small changes in your life that you can make to please the Lord will determine or will help create a better situation for you. So just like a police officer, if they're told that you have to fight for the line of duty, then that's what you do. The same reason why we do that in a material sense, we should be doing that on a spiritual sense as well, knowing that God is our supreme and that we are his servants. Is there any other questions? That was a good question. That's true. It's legit.
I have a question, sort of challenge.
Yeah, please.
How do we remedy what is said in the Vedic scriptures about what should be eaten with that of, say, Native American or other Native or First Nation tribes that ate based on seasonality and availability?
Mhm.
And other scriptural references about, like, right, you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier some of the biblical references. The Book of Mormon is very big on what you should and should not consume. It's like drilled into my brain. So yeah, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
remedy some of those.
No, this is a good question. So when I preach about prashadam or any of the diets that I particularly participate in, I never go to somebody. Now I well with the caveat, I will never ever advise somebody to eat beef. I will never do it. I just cannot. But generally, I have an understanding that in the material world, there are not a lot of people who have the knowledge of the Vedic scriptures like I do. That is my understanding. I completely understand that. It is not my job as a practitioner to tell somebody that their lifestyle of whatever they're eating is wrong. I'm here to simply attract people in a positive way to wanting to understand who they are in the relationship of God. And by doing so, I offer prashadam to people. I do not preach to them on ways in which they should live their lives. That will come on its own naturally if you are practicing and chanting. You will naturally come to wanting to do more, whatever capacity that is. And so I don't go around and saying that other cultures are doing things in an incorrect or wrong way. I tend to offer prasadam, which is a blessing from the Lord to people, in which that helps purify their bodies and soul, and is a more it's a more what's the word I want to use? It's a better way to have people more favorably wanting to know more about the Lord, not preaching like you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. So it's a blessing more so than of me sharing prasadam than me telling somebody that you should not. The scriptures will let you know what the prescribed activities are and the prescribed food stuffs are, and that's going to be, it's not the easiest thing for people to digest. But as a practitioner, I am simply here to offer more blessings and help purify the body.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to that because I've been raised this way. And I just, I've always had this sort of affinity for native tribes that sort of lived with the land in harmony. And they talk about living since time immemorial, and how you can sort of sustain life in perpetuity. And they give great heedance towards the life that is in all beings. They talk to the trees and they feel them, and they guide them, right? And they give thanks for all of the foods that they partake in, right? So yeah, it's just that's one that in my brain, like, I was vegetarian for a long time, and my hair started falling out because I wasn't getting enough protein, right? Like, there are things. I want to eat a heck of a lot less meat. It shouldn't be something that I do on a daily basis, but that is something I'm just sort of kicking around in my own mind. Like you said, I
Yeah.
appreciate it'll just come with time.
Mhm.
Um,
There's no force. You want, and none of this practice is a forceful thing. It will come naturally. I was not raised a vegetarian. Um, what I will say again is, though, I think a big difference between bhakti practitioners and somebody who's just a plain vegetarian is that our main focus is to offering the food to the Lord. And we are simply doing all of our activities for the pleasure of the Lord and not for ourselves. And that's what causes the food to be in our knowledge purified and able to share for other people to have that. And so that's the meaning of what we're doing. We're not here to go around and telling people like you're living wrong. That'll never, attract people to wanting to know the Lord. That is why there is so much issue with religion these days. Because even bhakti, we don't consider ourselves religious, but people don't like religion because a lot of the times they feel like they're being forced or they're being shamed or they're being something. And that's not how the material world works. You can't, but naturally, if you are inclined and really curious about and you practice sincerely, I wouldn't put much pressure on you. But like I said, I will never recommend somebody to eat beef. I will never do it. But the practices, even so, say like, right, you have a balanced meal in your mind and there's meat there, right? What about the other stuff? Can you not offer that to the Lord, right? You can offer that to the Lord, and then you're still doing substantially more than just eating everything and thinking that you're doing everything wrong because you're eating meat. So small practices. The only thing that the Lord wants you to do is to remember him. Please consider me. Remember me. That's it. So when you're thinking sometimes like, oh, maybe I'm doing something wrong, maybe think, oh, well, maybe I can't offer this to the Lord, because of my conditioning, because of what, my body says it needs. But then these things are approved. So I should offer this to the Lord. And then after I offer this to the Lord, I should thank him for being able to have it. And that is substantially beneficial in comparison to just eating something. Substantially. If you put that in your practice, you chant a little Hare Krishna a couple of times, that is like 99% of the world doesn't even consider the Lord, you know, when he controls all of this stuff. So if you offer that and you remember him and you're like, thank you, after you, I mean, that's what we're here to do, for, you know, not to tell people that what they're doing is wrong.
Right? It was all wonderful questions, wonderful answer, wonderful answer. Um, so at this point of time, of course, we have gone a little more than what we desire,
My
but
bad, guys.
see, the purpose is to learn, right? And that's what we are doing. And I can see that you all are staying here, listening, hearing, means these are very useful time, right? Time well spent, right? So today we completed our module 1. From next week, we will begin module 2. And you see, once Bree had talked about that, there are 5 topics in philosophical system, especially in Bhagavad Gita. There are 5 topics, right? We, the jiva, right? So all the living entity, jiva. Then there is the supreme. Then there is the time. There is karma, and there is the material world. 5 topic. In the first topic, typically we covered the jiva, who we are, where we went into the mind, subtle body aspect, right? Then we talked about the modes. Those are the material concepts, right? Because we are coming in contact with the matter, right? So we talked about that interaction a little bit. Now in the module 2, we will be start going into the relationship with the soul, with the super soul. What our relationship? How to perceive the super soul? Is there a spiritual world? Then if it is, then how to perceive it? Then we will talk about the time factor. When our philosophy talk about the time factor, it is a very different scale. When you'll see the video, you'll be saying, like, these are all the topics. I'm pretty sure a lot of these will create a wow effect, right? Just like today you heard 8.4 million species. So these are the all new information which is being presented to you. And as you start putting all this together, so as we are putting all these building blocks, as we start putting all this together, your your realization of the answers will evolve. And as just Bree was talking about, as you do the little practice, make little advancement, chant little bit, whatever, as we are making the little progress, in proportion to that, our realization of these subject matter will keep increasing. And you will start not only learning this topic in a from the informational perspective, but from the realization perspective, it will also grow. Okay, so we will continue during the same time because this batch is continuing, right? So these are the 12 topics I'll quickly go over. So we'll talk about then what are the real problems, because see, we want to be happy, right? So we started in the module 1, we want to be happy. Right now we are saying that we want to be happy, but invariably we are not happy because the misery comes. What are the real problems of life? Because if we have to solve some any problem, then we need to identify the root cause, right? So that's, we'll start with the first topic, what is the root cause? And then we'll say that, okay, then why we are here, why we have to deal with these problems, why not somewhere else? Like, so as a Purv say that, okay, we start from human. Why did I take a birth as a human on this earth? I could have been somewhere else. Why did I come here? Right? So why are we here? Then we'll talk about the time factor, because that's important, right? Because that's how the whole material world is shaping up and coming up and going away. So you'll see that it is a cyclic, right? The yoga ladder, we'll talk about the different yoga ladder system. You must have karma yoga, jnana yoga, stanga yoga, bhakti yoga. Are these all different paths, or they are all come together? Right? So we talk about that. Then with different paths, one supreme. Then we talk about the different religious practice. Now here is the one we are going from the spirituality to the religiosity a little bit, because there is a connection, right? We are a spiritual practitioner, but then the kind of practice we do, it brings the cultural element, right? from which culture we have come from. I come from the Christian culture or a Jews culture, right? So we try to bring the different paths, one supreme. Then the faith and reason. We say that, oh, this is a faith-based. Like we always say that religion is faith-based. Is there a place for the reason? Are we faith-based means emotional, or there's something more to it, right? Is the faith is based on the reason or not? So we'll go into those aspects. Then we'll talk about the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra again. So we started with the topic one, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And now we'll go into the scientific understanding of Hare Krishna Mantra, how the science of sound works, right, and how it helps. Then topic 8, does the divine have a form? So we'll start. Okay, now we started understanding there is a divinity. We have talked about it. We have started using the word Lord. Now, does the now what is the aspect of the divine? Because we hear that, oh, there's an energy, divine energy. Okay, is the divine is only energy, or does the divine has some shape, what it is? So we'll talk about, does the divine have a form? Then we'll come to the some of the practice with the question comes, right, that, oh, the practitioner um, of the Bhagavad Gita, or this practitioner, you guys do deity worship. What is the are the deities are idol? Are you guys really? What is the logic behind it? What are deities or idol? Right? We'll talk about that. Then we'll go to the supreme consciousness. This is where we start going directly into that topic. Is the unseen friend? How to see that unseen friend, and why we call him a friend when I am suffering, or someone's child dies, or someone who's not supposed to die, they die. Is he a friend or is he an enemy? Right? Then how to perceive the spiritual world. Bree today talked about there are planets above Earth, below Earth. We can go anywhere, but ultimately everything is a part of the material world, right? So we'll talk a little bit of that, and then we'll talk about we'll end this module two with the spiritual relationship. Today we end the topic, the module one, with understanding we are on a journey. We are evolving, our consciousness are evolving. So we change the paradigm. It's not our body we are evolving, but from our philosophical perspective, we say that our consciousness are evolving, and we are on that journey. We are talking now, right? So already we have made the progress, right? So we'll talk about the spiritual relationship. What is a spiritual relationship? How to identify it? How to understand it? So these are the 12 topics we will cover in module 2. So you'll see these are all on a progressing basis. We are going deeper and deeper, right? Are you excited? Apurv, ready to take on more?
Only 399,999 life forms to go.
It will go fast. It'll go fast, right? So now we have our friends, like we started talking to them 1.5 years ago, and like, wow, they are just running. Some of them are running. So and they were a batch who had completed module 1, but then started module 2. I'll try to reach out to them and see that if they can also join. So, and if this time works, so we'll try to do that also. All right. So we'll continue. So that the main thing is we will continue next week. Again, we are going to meet. Hope you all will be joining. Right. All right. So, and we will have our Bree